good afternoon. Welcome to our final session in this room of the conference. I don't know if we kept the best for last, but I'm sure my panel will do a fantastic job in a minute. What are we going to do today? Before I do a quick introduction, my name is Paul de Leeuw. I'm your moderator for this session. I'm from Robert Gordon University in Scotland, and I'm delighted to have such a great panel here to talk about something which is really important. So you heard in the conference already, massive amount of change is coming, massive amount of enthusiasm to make this change happen. And of course, that means different things. We need different companies, different capabilities, different ways of working, different business models. The world is changing and we need companies to change. And this session is really around how is this change going to happen and what can we do from government organizations, other organizations, to help to set us up for success. So the plan for the session is Peter from DNV will talk a little about the great work they've done with the energy transition outlook and specifically what it means for the wind sector first. So we're going to take about 10 minutes to do that. Then I'm going to ask the other panel members to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves and their company. Then I will start with some questions, but then I'm going to come to you, audience, to make sure we address what you have in your mind, what help you need, and what can we collectively do to set this industry, this sector up for success. Absolutely critical we do that right. So that's the plan for this afternoon. I will come back to you. I will come and ask you questions, so just be ready for it. But to start, Peter, can I ask you to talk a little bit around what the big context really is?
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here to share some of the insights and results from this year's edition of the Energy Transition Outlook. DNV has been issuing an energy transition outlook the last 6 years, and the last version here, the updated version, was released last month in October. So what I'm going to do here, we'll start just to fly in and go directly into the power sector so we can see the play. And here I have two news. I mean, one good news and one maybe less good news. The good news is that the energy transition is really going to play very aggressively in the power sector. And that, of course, is important from many angles. First and foremost, because the power sector accounts today for more than 40% of CO2 emissions, but also because of the trend of power in modern societies. We are going to be more and more electrified. And therefore, it is super important that it is going in a more sustainable and green way. And in this edition here, in 2050, we forecast that 68% of electricity will be coming from solar and wind. So you can see it is going to be a journey with a lot of action because we are coming from a point of wind only accounting for around 10% and offshore wind only just below 1%. And when we get to 2050, offshore wind will grow to account for around 10%. The less good news is that this is a model, and a model, of course, is also always based on assumptions. And some of the assumptions are something we need to take. So one assumption is that governments and politicians take their energy system very seriously. We don't hope that we will see too much disruption political-wise, but it's also fair to say that governments and politicians are the driver's seat in deciding which direction different markets are going. So let's look into also what is maybe a less good news. I think it's fair to say that we are living in challenging times. We are coming out of a war situation in Europe, or still going on. We are coming out of the COVID situation with a lot of supply chain disruption. And we are also starting to see some of the consequences for a very promising green industry, which has been growing immensely over the last few years. What is really challenging the projects and the business cases these days is, of course, the rising interest rates. And it is, of course, also the cost inflation on components out of the COVID. Supply chains normally can change in terms of capacity, so it gets back to a normal. What is more concerning is if the interest rates stay high, then there is or will be a need for calibration on the subsidies or what is going to kick off these investments going forward. We have also seen that some markets will have challenges in actually taking off all the power coming from renewables. So we need more emphasis on planning for grids. It's not every market that is like the Netherlands with a very strong and very able TSO like TenneT. In many markets, it even may not be the government, it may be privatized. So it is actually something that can hold back also how fast this change is going. And we have also seen that here in recent years, some of the OEMs have had problems with quality. As I said, it has been quite busy years over the last 5-10 years. I'll come back to that. And we are also now seeing some quality problems coming out. And I'm sure that everyone also have seen that some of the main players here are actually struggling with delivering good financial results here lately. So these are realities that we also need to factor in. And that is also the reason why, if you look at what is going to happen in terms of installed capacity in the next years, that yes, this decade is going to be a little bumpy. It's going to be a little up and down. And of course, in terms of how much installed capacity for next year depends on decisions that goes back many years, 5, 6, 8 years, if we are talking about, or even more, talking about global markets. I think the good news is that when we get closer to 2030, we will get into more stable, positive development, and we will have settled some of the challenges that we know here on the short term. But looking at wind installed capacity, we forecast that it's going to be moving forward or growing with a factor 20. By 2050, we forecast that total installed capacity will be 1,600 gigawatt coming out from the current 70 gigawatt. So a lot is going to happen. 83% will be allocated to bottom fixed offshore wind, and 17% will be allocated to floating wind. Actually, the 1,600 in 2050, we had to take 400 gigawatt out of that number. So last year we actually said 2,000. But because of these constraints and challenges we're seeing in the market, we have adjusted the model to reflect these realities. So looking on which market are we talking about in offshore wind, looking to the mid-century, yes, China is also going for offshore wind to be the biggest market with 430 gigawatt. But it is followed by Europe with 352 gigawatt, and again, North America on a third place. Yes, it is good to see that Europe is still maintaining a strong position here, but China is, of course, a very determined and big market also playing into this technology segment. In floating wind, it is a bit different. Here, actually, Europe is going to be the leading market with 76 gigawatt towards 2050, followed by China with 59, and again, North America on a third place. And here, of course, the market growth is exponential. It's a factor 1,500, but it is, of course, because it's coming from a very, very low demonstration installed capacity level at the moment. So what is really kicking this development, and why are we seeing these numbers and data in the forecast? Yes, it is mostly because of the fantastic development in terms of getting the prices down for the technology. So the price for bottom fixed has come down over the last 10 years with more than 40%. And we also forecast that in the years to come, there's still more to do here. I mean, so we are very optimistic that floating wind is going to move down towards $50 towards mid-century, coming down from a global level of $85 at the moment. Floating wind is moving down from 140, we say, and you can see the graph is only starting at the end of the 20s. Because we don't know what floating exactly is going to be on an industrial scale at the moment, but we have been taking a bit here on it, and we say we start with 140, and that will be eventually moving down to $67 by mid-century. You will see in our graph that that floating wind will still come with a premium. So the premium in this forecast this year is 34% more price for floating compared to bottom fixed. I know there are other forecasters out there that are more bold or optimistic on behalf, but we're a little more cautious and say that yes, floating wind has a great potential, but it's still going to be slightly more expensive, even though the wind resource out there may be slightly higher than bottom fixed, but the cost will also be higher. So we will have longer distance for cabling, dynamic cabling, and maybe also operation and maintenance may be a factor in. So all in all, I think it's fair to say that DNV is very optimistic on behalf of the offshore wind technology. The reasons for that is that this technology is being offered in great capacity. So it is a gigawatt size capacity. There are really not many other technologies offering that kind of both price and scale. Maybe nuclear, but nuclear will be more expensive and take longer time. And that is, for that reason, all the nations which have a location will exploit it. And other drivers for offshore wind, of course, is that it can be linked into also the growth of hydrogen or PTX technologies. So it makes sense actually for this part of the world, the North Sea, to go very aggressive because the surplus electrons will be reallocated into production of hydrogen and PTX. And also there are many nations in this part of the world which are also big players in the maritime sector, and that is a hard to abate sector looking for exactly green fuels. So we are very hopeful for the technology, and I think I should stop by that, and we can talk more about the challenges that we are also seeing, because obviously the danger by presenting such an optimistic forecast like we do here is that people just lean back and say this is going fine, it's going automatic, but of course it's not. It is dependent on subsidies, and that decisions will be made in terms of permitting, the right subsidy levels, the right decisions on transmissions also. So a lot of uncertainty still to see these numbers actually come through. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's not often you hear a story where things increase by 20, 25%, 20 times over a period of time. I mean, that is incredible. So that's quite an excitement. We'll come back to it a little bit more, what that means for the supply chain and how we plan for that. Because one thing is an ambition and target. The second is how we're actually going to get there. What I want to do, if that's all right, get an introduction from all the other members on the panel before I then get into a real conversation. Henk, can we start with you, please?
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. My name is Henk van Elburg. I represent the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, which is part of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And I work on a program for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on export promotion in the renewable energy sector, which is called ICEP, International Clean Energy Partnership. And I'm responsible for the offshore wind track within that program.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
My name is Arjen Schutten. I'm the Managing Director of Holland Home of Wind Energy. We are an export association for Dutch wind power companies. And if I have to say in one word what we do, is that we try to give our members a soft landing on emerging wind power markets. So what we do is we organize trade missions, inbound, outbound. Tomorrow, for instance, there's a big delegation already here at the OEEC, and we will have organized 4 tracks to Eemshaven, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and Delft. We organize that in close cooperation with the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. And we also set up Netherlands lounges at important trade shows in US, China, Japan, Taiwan, Ireland, you name it. And also we provide a lot of market intelligence for our members. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Teun?
Good afternoon. My name is Teun Verschoor, representing Cape Holland in China, Taiwan, Korea and Japan, so Northeast Asia. They asked me to come over here to be, let's say, optimistic about the offshore wind market. We are quite active in that area, quite successful. So we are still very optimistic for our chances worldwide. We really try to lower the cost of the wind farms and the installation times. Of course, first you need to invest in our equipment, but then you earn it back very quickly. So later on I will tell you a little bit more of what we do in the Northeast Asia market. But it's quite a challenge, but at the same time it's quite successful for us, and also have quite a close cooperation with Henk and with Arjen. We support always their trade missions in that part of the world.
Brilliant, thank you so much. That's who's on the panel. Since it's the last session today, I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm coming to see you. So I'm going to come down. I want to get a flavor who's in the audience. Can you just put your hands up if you are a developer? Any developers in the room? Where are you developing? Vattenfall, excellent. Supply chain companies? Not many, just one supply chain company. Wow. Any companies on the government side or helping other companies to make things happen in the wind sector? Where you work? Okay, excellent. Yourself?
Helping. I'm from the Netherlands Wind Industry.
Netherlands Wind. Okay, you heard some concerns from Peter when he started his presentation around cost inflation, supply chain challenges. Who's worried about cost inflation? Anybody? Okay, a couple of people. Peter, what can we do to help these people with cost inflation? Is this going to continue? Can we see these problems, or is it going to change?
Yeah, I think it's basically a chicken and egg situation for the suppliers, because what they are, of course, in a situation where they need to make these difficult decisions on ramping up or not. And certainly no, serious player will do it if there's a risk to ramp up. So the best thing to remedy that situation is, of course, to have clarity, market clarity, that this market is actually going to show, and not only listening to what I'm saying in the forecast, but actually see the market and the different auctions come out, year on year. And that would be giving the confidence for scaling up manufacturing capacity. So that is essential, and the reason why it's not happening is the unclarity that we are seeing in many markets. Yeah.
So the other thing I've seen, and this is maybe for Henk, for you, right? So there's, when I look at the chart here, there was in the wind session earlier today, there are 5 or 6 countries who are going to do most of the wind in Europe. If you think about it, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Ireland, probably UK. We need to get it right. What can government organizations like you do to help people to set it up for success? I mean, again, the government has to play a helping hand to make the market work. What can you do to help organizations?
Well, I can only explain that for the Dutch government, of course. What we can do, and what we already do, is we try to set the right conditions for the offshore wind sector development. What we try to do is provide them with a long-term vision of future wind parks that will be built, which is legally established in law, that we have these roadmap plans. What we also try to do is to try to do the preliminary work, like the permitting, like the site studies, try to do them ahead of the real tendering process, to try to pre-develop the sites and pre-permit the sites as much as possible, that once there is this point of tendering coming, that there is a lot of trust in the market, because they know if they win a tender, they win the permit, and they know that their bid has been based on the best site data available, and they know that they bid in a level playing field situation, so with no local content and with everybody, wherever you come from, whatever a developer comes from, will have the same chance of winning.
Can I add something to that? Please. And what, for instance, is interesting when our members always want to focus on new markets. So, for instance, I want to give 2 examples of countries that are now developing offshore wind. One is Korea, and that is for us a little bit the land of the unfulfilled promises, because they have a beautiful supply chain in Korea, but the government policy is not yet in place. It's still a debate within Korea on renewables, on nuclear. And the other one is, for instance, is Sweden, which is a new kid on the block. But if you now apply for a project in Sweden, if you're successful, maybe about 20 years. What we like to do then with the Dutch government and also with the companies, we like to visit these countries, tell a little bit about our success story, but also about our failures, because you can only convince your counterpart if you also are willing to say where you failed. So we have a beautiful roadmap now in the Netherlands. We all know that we have now a 4.7 gigawatt installed. And this success story, how we did it, and our failures, that we try to convey to countries that are now developing offshore wind. And hopefully, we don't want to be a preacher in this, but just tell us our experience and go from there.
So in your unique experience, you're in the supply chain, you're in this business. What have you seen? What have you learned so far?
What we are actually doing as Cape Holland. Actually, my background is IHC equip for piling hammers for 10 years. And I changed 5 years ago to Cape Holland for vibro lifting tools. And one of the reasons for that is they really want to change what we call the installation of foundation market. Everything is getting bigger, more expensive. Everybody is saying it looks very nice, the big piling hammers, noise mitigation screens, big templates, but actually it is driving the cost upwards. And what we do with Cape Holland, and that's why I changed company, they really drive down the cost. They change the market. They are established in 2002. So the first, let's say, 20 years, it's really fighting ourselves into the market. But the last year, 2 years, it's really exploding. We have now projects in America, in Europe. Myself, I'm busy in Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and in China. And we really drive down the cost of foundations. So we can see the appreciation, especially from developers. Although developers are not directly our clients, but we really drive down the cost. And that's, I always say that's why you are here in the market. Everybody speaks about it, but you need to prove it. And I think Cape Holland, the last year, it's really growing fast. Take a look in the exhibition hall if you're walking around. We really drive down the cost. And that's what drives, let's say, changing job from piling hammers to vibro lifting tools.
So I spent actually a bit of time walking around, and I was blown away by the capability and capacity, what is out there and what I've seen. Bits of the market still feel quite fragmented to me, where I'm saying it's going to mature a little bit. All right, I'm going to start with you before I go to Peter. Fragmentation in the market, where do you see that going? I mean, do we get bigger players coming in? Do we get more critical mass? Do we get actually bigger developments where we can start standardization? Actually, not as similar we see in the oil and gas industry many decades ago. Do you expect that's going to happen? Do you see that in your...
Standardization?
Standardization and less fragmentation.
Oh. To be honest, I'm not that optimistic on this issue. There was only a few weeks ago, there was a big interview in a Dutch newspaper about the OEMs, which are in dire straits because of the rat race in the turbine height. And everybody says, well, we have to set limits to it. And a lot of people, there was one guy, I think he was from Esbjerg, the port of Esbjerg, and he said, this industry is, nobody is going to put limits on the turbine size. They will go through with it. And that makes me a little bit worried. Also, especially if you look at floating wind, standardization is key for floating wind. If you have to build floaters like 2 football fields, where do you get all the steel? How are you going to produce it in serial production? It is very important, but maybe also to you, is who is going to enforce this? Who's going to enforce the standardization? Only the industry can do that, not a European Union maybe. But I'm just wondering.
Let's go, Peter. What do you think?
I think there's no way around without standardization, because the whole market situation with the higher interest rates, the higher component prices, the business case being more challenged, there's more risk in the industry these days. And if we cannot find ways of bringing down the cost in terms of scale economics in the supply chain, we will simply see a lower pace in the industry. So there's no way around. We need industrialization, and governments need to help us by providing that roadmap that will make the suppliers confident to build that capacity. So it's not rocket science, but it's just a number of different events that need to come now. We are coming out of a market where everything was possible. Zero rate of interest rates. Governments who were overbeating each other in terms of ambition. That has changed now. You cannot drive critical infrastructure investments on those two components alone. Today, now it is cracking time. We need something that we can take to the banks and make the business case. And that is the big sea change we're seeing in the industries these days. So therefore, it's very interesting time. And you saw my slides that it's going to go a little down and then maybe up again. But it will be very much dependent that we will see maybe more governments like the Netherlands, who did present a lot of very, very strong regulatory approach and taking risk out of it. But that is not the case in many other places, actually.
But will the industry adjust itself? Or do we need some enforcement, you think, from a higher level?
Sometimes I'm puzzled that we are treating critical infrastructure like our power sector so casual we're doing these days, and think that it can just be left for market forces only. We know that in crisis situations that we are in now, market forces may also be delays and not showing this transition that we all need for many reasons. So if not for the climate reasons, then for security of supply reasons. So I really miss that understanding at the political level that we actually need maybe emergency measures to deal with this challenge we have here on the super short term to get this going and to make the right choices for Europe going forward.
I know you can't speak on behalf of the Dutch government, but it's quite interesting. You're the closest to government than anybody on the panel here. Is that possible? Can governments make interventions like that? What's Peter saying?
Well, I think in a way they can, and I think in a way we already do. For instance, to prevent the market from becoming overheated, as we are now facing. What we can do is, as a government, try to not go for the maximum, for the minimum, if you look at the cost, or for the maximum, if you look at potential revenue. You should, if you tender sites, look at the broader picture, and that it's, of course, for a societal point of view, that will not be on its own, this wind farm, and a sort of a cash cow. No, it will be interrelated with other wind farms. It will have to be integrated in its surrounding, and that means that we will also use in our tender system not just the financial criterion, we use also what many of us call the non-price criteria, which is not really the best name, because the non-price criteria also cost a lot of money, but they are related to future system integration. So we look ahead of our system, but we also look very much like to, for instance, ecology measures, to make sure that the whole picture, when you develop this offshore wind sector, is not fully based on financial conditions or parameters, but also on social parameters. And that is what project developers actually very much prefer, because that allows them to invest in their own innovation instead just providing the money to the government. And that is something that we as a government also try to promote. We even have programs to promote these innovations. I see a colleague of mine in the back with the MOI programma is such an example of trying to help the sector develop, come to new solutions, which in the end will be cost reducing for the whole sector, of course. But that means that they just do not spend the money in the pockets of the government, but they invest it in their own innovation development.
Brilliant. I'm going to do one more question, then I come to the audience for questions, so please be ready. Peter, I'm going to address this to you. You showed a very interesting chart where Europe is going to be leading on offshore, floating offshore wind rather than anybody else. What does it mean? What do we need to do to be a leader, right? Other than just doing lots of volume, I would imagine. But just say a bit more. What supply chain do we need? What regulatory framework do we need? Because leadership requires that you have all these things in place to do it well, and really well. So can you characterize that a little bit? What does leadership look like for floating offshore wind?
I would say that first and foremost we need industry scale, tenders to come out now. It's important that there is that kind of market signal that we're moving from demonstration technology to something bigger scale. And then, of course, there's a big job in the industry to try and get agreement about what would be the most consensus designs. Because today we have more than 100 different designs for floaters. And that, of course, is not a super sufficient path to scale economics. So we need some consensus on 5 to max 10 concepts that can be scaled very fast for the supply chain, because that would be a major element for bringing down the cost of floating also.
So, Arjen, any comments around what leadership looks like in floating wind from your industry perspective?
I still believe, although it's a new market, floating wind, what I can see as well, it's still full with what we say all traditional oil and gas, let's say engineering. And I think for offshore wind, you really need to focus on the real application offshore wind, where foundations can be different, installation processes needs to be changed. You cannot use oil and gas procedures anymore. So I think although there are many different concepts, it's still a little bit what we call old-fashioned. You really need to develop more and innovate in this kind of designs. That's a little bit what we see as a Cape Holland. There must be still a lot of changes. And to drive the cost down for floating wind, it's not even started yet. But you can see actually if you have 1 or 2 floaters or demonstrators, it's not a very big issue, let's say, if the costs are higher than expected. But if you really build a farm with 30, 40 foundations, with all respect, if you make one mistake, you get it 40 times back. So there, I think you really need to innovate, especially mooring systems, foundation types itself. You see a lot of semi-submersibles. From my perspective, but maybe I'm a little bit blunt, I think it's not the best solution for floating wind. You need more, let's say, a spar type, where you have more stable foundations for your turbines. So these discussions, I think there must be much more on the table. And that's a little bit what we see.
Arjen, do you see that happening? Do these conversations taking place? What Teun is talking about?
Yeah, actually, I think it was 2 years ago on this offshore energy exhibition. There was a masterclass in floating wind with experts from Marin. And Marin is a knowledge institute in the Netherlands, and they test a lot of floaters in their water basins in Wageningen. And also Gusto MSC is an NOV company, and they have, they are known for the jackups, but also they have developed a tri-floater. And they said, well, my first thing would be we have to set up a kind of European supply chain. But they said, these experts, is we need so much steel for the floaters that we will be dependent on countries like China, Korea, who can really manufacture these kind of steel chunks, superstructures. Secondly, yesterday I also went to the, there was a session on port development. And there was one expert from Van Oort, and he said, well, an expert from Van Oort, he said, well, for bottom fixed, the ports are important, but not too important, because you can also use feeder vessels, etc. But for floating wind, the ports are key, because you need the wet storage, etc., etc. And at this moment, we are talking about ambitions already in 2030, but at this moment we have only one small dedicated harbor, a port, which is in Port-la-Nouvelle, France. And you need big investments. And then who's going to invest in this? And then you have the usual chicken and egg situation. So then my opinion would be, well, let's have funding from the European Union to support that. But then the other ports will say, hey, this is, we have no, how do you say that? The competition between the existing ports and, hey, you're supporting a new ports, and we have invested everything in ourselves, like Eemshaven or Oostende, you know, or Hull or Esbjerg. Now you're financing with sweet money new ports. So there's no level playing field. That's the word I was looking for.
Absolutely, get it right. Brilliant. Important time. I come to the audience. Any questions? Well, it's getting very quiet. There's one here in the middle, please. Would you mind your name and just the question? Keep it short, right? So I can remember it.
Hi, everybody. Eric Comirma, RPS Consultancy. So 2 questions. It is about the outlook, the trends. So first question is, have you taken into account the goals, the climate change impact, so whether it's going to be more or less pressure on further developing energy, clean energy? And the second question is how decommissioning, right? So some of these outlook is for 2050, let's say. So decommissioning is going to have a cost, right, implied in these expectations? Thanks.
Okay, so 2 questions. Peter, I'm going to come to you first, and maybe we get a comment. If you can address them both. So first of all, what's been taken account on the targets, and then the other one, decommissioning and cost?
I think that the challenge from climate change is not going to go away anytime soon. And unfortunately, this is going to hit us harder and harder. And therefore, this is something that will be kicking back into the political agenda with some force in the future. Yes, there might be other challenges for society, like the economy and having jobs and stuff like that. But we need to solve this. It's a more systemic risk, and therefore I'm quite confident that this message has come across to most regulators. So it's not going away, if that's part of your question. On your other point was
decommissioning.
Decommissioning.
I don't know what's behind your question. Yes. Is they need to be replaced? Yes. Is it in the capacity number? Is that what behind that? Yes.
So decommissioning is something that is already going on for onshore wind, for example, and is going to be playing, I think, a big role in terms of also generating new projects going forward. It has not come to offshore wind in any big scale so far, because we have only had offshore wind for 25 years. But it will be coming now, and therefore it's something to factor in. We do foresee that this is going to be a big area in terms of lifetime extension, but also looking at the new technology that is being offered to actually decommission a site with the latest technology. So this is going to play into the equation, and a lot of interesting permitting issues will be arising there, of course, but I think it's a good story in a way that we can get more energy with the latest technology at sites that are already being developed.
Yeah. So Peter, just to make sure I get it, your capacity addition number includes the replacement of what is already decommissioned?
Yes.
Okay, I hope that addresses your question. Very good. Any other questions? Okay, one here.
I also have a question. I'm from NVA, by the way. I also have a question about the study you did. I'm a demographer by background, so I love looking at statistics and projections and things like that. But what surprises me when I look at 2050 and the installed capacity is that if you compare India and China, because I know that in terms of population, it doesn't seem China is going to grow, even going to decline, whereas India is going to grow a lot.
China will be in 2050 800 million, and they are now 1.3 billion. So they're really aging country.
Exactly. Aging to a high extent, but when I look at the capacity, it doesn't seem like that, unless, it's just about industries. I'm curious, what are the assumptions?
I would think the assumptions is that we are seeing more electrification of every society, and there's still a big job to be done in China. So you will see a lot of demand on electrification in a sustainable manner in this market. And we know now that when China go in a direction, in a determined way, they are also delivering. And that is something that we could be hopeful to see also for a market like India. The same kind of planned approach, determined approach, and actually doing something about it, because they will be a very big emitter in the future, and the need to have more forceful strategies around securing the energy transition, obviously.
Sorry, we can't hear. Would we get the microphone?
Yeah.
Would it be possible, please?
But did you also take into account that because of population decline in China and population growth in India, that this also affects economics, and economics affect energy usage?
Yes, it is. We do take all the macroeconomic elements into the equation here. And you can get more information if you download the report and you can see the assumptions. We're also building in prices of carbon, so in the ETS system and in other carbon markets. So we also put in some assumptions on how this is going. And here, of course, you can debate whether we are too ambitious, optimistic, or pessimistic. But at least we show transparently what our assumptions are for this modeling. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to look at it.
It is a public report, yes.
I suggest follow up afterwards if you have any questions, Evan. There's a question at the back there. Two questions. The lady first and gentleman at the back, please.
Hi, thank you. So this is... Okay. I've been to a number of sessions, and I've heard about supply chain issues. We've heard about permitting. What we haven't heard about is skills and talent and the people to implement these changes. Do we have the skills and talent? And maybe I'm focused on this because I work in the Netherlands on how we can bring international talent in to work on energy products. Do we have the policy that we need to ensure that there's feet on the ground quickly, specifically on sustainable and wind energy products?
I think it's a brilliant question. Love your question. Actually, we just wrote a report for the UK, so I want to hear from what you have to say. Let me hear from a Netherlands perspective. People, skills, I see all the charts going up, lots of demand, supply chain, people, capabilities. Is it possible?
Of course. But as we look at the current situation, all our efforts go into setting the right conditions for sector development. And I think we have a few buttons in the right position. But as you already mentioned, one of the main buttons is get the people over here who want to work in the business and develop their expertise. That is a big problem in the Netherlands. Businesses are really struggling to get new employees to do the job, and that is a main limiting factor. And from a personal point of view, I believe this is one of the additional points that we should try to integrate, to have some sort of a promotional programs or to attract more people to this business, because it's really exciting and things are really moving fast. But currently, we are not, or maybe you have another opinion on that, we have not such an active policy on trying to attract more people into the business, because there are so many sectors dealing with the same problem.
Ian, you want to say something?
Well, we have the Netherlands Wind Energy Association here in the room, so maybe can ask them if they have a kind of policy on this as well.
Okay, I'll come to that in a second. So, do you want to say something at all?
Yeah, maybe it's interesting to know as well, if I look at the European market, we are, let's say, busy for, let's say, more than 20, 25 years. And we have quite some knowledge built up. And I'm active in the Asian market, where you can see in Korea now, a lot of expats are working there. So they share the knowledge with, let's say, the local Korean people. It's not really stimulated by the government, but you see it's happening. So the Koreans are picking up very quickly, let's say, the knowledge from the European market. And the interesting point in Taiwan, there is really a program that if you want to be active in Taiwan, you have the localization programs also for the people. And let's say Daimei is a typical example. They built the company CDWE. It's a joint venture. They hire a lot of local people. They train them. A lot of Taiwanese people go to Europe now, and the project starts next year, and the people are basically already trained in the European market. So I think if I look at Taiwan and Korea, you really see there's a quick knowledge transfer to local people.
I'm going to take it back. Can we get a microphone back to the lady here? I want to hear if you're worried about it, because you asked the question for a reason.
Yeah, I am worried about it because our job is to help the companies do the work that you want them to do. Everybody here is bidding on tenders. You want them to bid on those tenders. Our job is then to help with the implementation. And the timelines are long. I have to really say that the international trade regulation that the Netherlands has put in place is the only thing like it in the world. And it has been helpful for rotators, people coming through. But in the end, there isn't that attractive policy in the EU, in the Netherlands, we work around the globe, that really allows for specific attraction into these really critical areas. And instead, there's a bit of that push against international talent, because everybody's a bit skeptical in general, and not creating targeted, very laser sharp policy, for example, for wind talent. So you could fast track a project. If it's wind talent, you could go really quickly through the international trade regulation. You would get extra points, right? So to start to stack the innovative qualifications into specific projects so that people can be fast-tracked, and then they have the certainty that they'll be able to bring people in and maybe not even exceed the bid costs because it's so expensive to bring international talent into the countries. So we could do better, definitely.
Brilliant, great point. Well, somebody in the wind sector here. Who represents the wind sector? Can we get your perspective here, Michel? I want to hear this voice here about the wind sector and what your view is.
Well, honestly, I'm not working on this topic, so I don't know as much as one of my colleagues. But we are working on it. We have some projects. So we go to certain schools, education schools, MBOs in Dutch. I don't know how to translate. Thanks. Where the focus on offshore wind and wind in general is increasing a lot. So there is, for example, an education in Delfzijl, I know. And we try to promote this more and more. We have a project that is more generally promoting to work in the wind industry as an attractive sector. So in that sense, we work on it, I think, but that's my personal opinion. I think we should also push more for an actual governmental policy to attract more workers in this field. One other thing, to come back to your point, I know there is a European policy in place, the Just Transition Mechanism, that through the Just Transition Fund is the idea is to reskill people from the fossil fuel industry to renewable industry. I think it's a good policy, but it's not enough. And I think we also need a national policy for this.
Brilliant. So more to be done. Peter, what can we do?
Yeah, I fully agree that this is a big issue. 10, 15 years ago, we had the same issue for onshore wind expertise. We are now seeing or have seen that challenge coming to the offshore industry over the last few years. So it's a big issue. Actually, in DNV, we merged two divisions 2.5 years ago, the oil and gas division with the energy and renewables division. And over the last 2.5 years, we've been setting up a upskilling, reskilling program internally to convert the people from the fossil fuel expertise over to offshore wind. And that has been a fantastic, successful project because it has been opening up more opportunities internally for people who actually want to make this shift, and we have been structuring it in an efficient way. So there's also something you can do internally in companies, and we're actually also offering these kind of upskilling and training courses externally to clients because we do see this is a great demand in the market at the moment. So you're right.
I'm going to keep you moving because I want to get a few more questions in. There's a question, gentleman in the back. Can we go there first? Oh, the microphone's out of the room. It's back in the room. Fantastic. It's a dynamic session here.
Sliman Dockster, we're an advisory and equipment brokering firm. I've got a question for Peter. Your forecast, are they supply constrained, or what's the assumption in terms of capacity for the industry to deliver a forecast with a time 20 over 20 years?
I think the assumption is basically that we will have the raw materials available if your question goes in that direction. But yes, we also see that there's a lot of innovation and research in using materials in a more efficient manner and reusing steel. So a lot of research is going into that area because it is a relevant question you're putting. We need a lot of steel in the offshore wind sector going forward. Floating is one area, but fortunately in that area it can also be delivered by concrete steel concepts. So there are other options available, and we need to do more research in that. So yes, we need to look for new technology and innovation in these areas. That's right.
Yeah, can I very quickly back to the gentleman? Sorry, Michel. What are you worried about? Any particular areas on supply constraints?
Actually, it was going to be my next question. In the supply chain, where are the area of constraint? Is it on the installation? Is it on the fabrication? We talked about yard, and sometimes the forecasts are looking at the demand side, but they don't look at the supply side of what the industry is able to deliver. We talked about people, but it's everything. It's resource in general.
It is.
And I've done a lot of forecasting, and when you look at it from the supply side, you may not be able to deliver as fast as the industry wants.
And you're fully right.
Just one or two things you're worried about, right, on the supply side.
So there's a good example from the vessel side. It takes time to build a new installation vessel for bigger turbine category, and they are challenged in that sector because the bidding is happening in a virtual manner these days, and maybe that's also something to consider in the Dutch context, because I saw that you will be looking at 15, 18, and 20. So if we talk about 18 and 20, it's going to be virtual
20 what?
megawatt turbines.
Yes.
And those rating of turbines would need new installation vessels, perhaps, adding more cost to the projects also. Yep. And it has been crazy, in my personal opinion, what has happened in the last 8 years in this industry, because you saw the cost curve coming down 40%, very, very fast. And maybe it would be good to have a little time out, and get the black into the business numbers again, because it has been crazy. I mean, it's gone very fast.
I'm going to keep you rolling. I know there's lots of things we can talk about on constraints, because I know there are plenty, and that's kind of the challenge. But that's also the opportunity for us. There's a question here at the front. Can we get a microphone here, please?
Hi, Alike Galema from Tata Steel. So if you need steel, feel free to give me a call anytime. But my question is on something else. It's more of a personal question. And it was triggered by the discussion on staffing the whole transition. As we are talking about a transforming market, in order to transform faster, we need more change, innovation, and propel that. Now, it's been proven that more diverse organizations propel change and have bigger also social impact and do that faster. Does any of you, looking at the panel from a diversity perspective, does any of your organizations specifically have any plans in that direction in order to make sure that innovation goes as fast as possible?
Yeah. Fantastic. That's a great question. Toon, I'm going to start with you.
Actually, Cape Holland has, of course, a dedicated R&D department for new innovations. We are focusing only on the offshore market. We are different than the other vibratory hammer suppliers. And if you want to be ahead of the competition, you must innovate your product. And it's really starting at the moment. The only issue we have at the moment, we are in Bijlen, which is a little bit in the north of the Netherlands. The problem is a little bit to get the right people, because let's say most of all the high-level educated people are still more or less in the, let's say, South and North Holland. So it's difficult to get the right people, but we still have quite some good people in Cape. But we are looking for more people because we are growing fast. And it's really a challenge to get, let's say, the high-level people in the company.
Your question is also more female power, maybe.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just check? I hear two things in your question. It's diversity and innovation, right? Can we just pick them both up? So, Arjen, sorry.
I cannot do anything about that. I'm just an export association. But when I'm in the US, because we have a lot of trade shows also in the US, I see more women than in the Netherlands working in the wind power industry. Maybe it's a little bit, the oil and gas is traditionally men's world, but we need more women in this. But I cannot address this. I don't know the answer. Okay. Within Holland Home of Wind, we have, I'm the only male. So.
Diverse audience,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Ethnicity, age,
yes,
neurodiversity,
okay.
all that. Yeah.
Three ladies and one guy.
Yeah. Okay. Henk, any views?
Well, yes, what can I say? If you look at our tenders, the current tenders, one of the selection criteria for developers to win a tender is one about international responsible business conduct, which is also a broad container name for several issues, but also contains about diversity, of course. And when it comes to innovation, of course, we promote innovation in our tenders as well, but on selected topics related to either ecology innovation, like silent piling, what will be a topic in the next tender, but also related to system integration, future construction of offshore wind and into hydrogen.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the title of the little thing you have below there.
Yes.
You might want to say something about that.
I'm so happy you do that. I'm so happy you do that. I didn't expect that.
Go for it.
No, not really. Please, for all of you who want to know more about the Dutch situation, either it is related to policy development or to the industry expertise that we have, and about the latest innovation, also related to floating, also related to hydrogen development, please download this guide. Please go to the Wind and Water Works website. Just Google Wind and Water Works Netherlands, then you will come on the website, and I believe then there will be a link on the home page, then you can download it.
Brilliant, fantastic. Diversity and innovation, and any views, Peter?
Yeah, super important, and happy to see that in DNV, this is also one of the top KPIs for management. Here, 2 years ago, we made a new position at management level. So we have a diversity innovation, not innovation, but a diversity officer who needs to drive this agenda. We need more women, we need more cultural diversity, and we are strong believers that this has also positive effects in terms of driving effective innovation. Unfortunately, I have to say that not so many females are going engineering way in terms of professional education. We need more women in this sector, in this area. But certainly we should have also at our booth here, we are hiring, and we should be doing more diversity because we want more women, absolutely. And next time I will be sending a representative, a female representative here from the floating side. Actually, we do have a lot of female engineers in DNV, so we try to do something about it, but it takes time.
Interest of time, I'm going to do one closing question before I'm going to close it out. So again, if you have any questions, please follow up with the panel members afterwards. So this is a very fast-paced industry, and you outlined that all very well. I want you to make one prediction for the next 5 years. I'm not going to hold you to it, although it's recorded, I won't hold you to it. One prediction for the sector in 30 seconds. Peter, what can we expect the next 5 years? See we cost down, what's going to happen, more larger things, what are we going to see? One prediction.
I think that governments and regulators understand what is going on in the bigger picture at the moment, and they see that this is a critical infrastructure industry that is needed, and they will come in and do the right things to enable us to move fast forward.
Okay, government will change. 30 seconds, Henk.
Yeah, for me, closely related to that, my expectation, but also based on hope, is that the industry sector will manage to recover from the current obstacles related to interest, rising costs, and that they will find a new balance to recover their business and to continue the growth.
Brilliant. So recover a new balance. Arjan, 30 seconds. One prediction.
My prediction will be that we will, within Europe, not talk anymore about local content, but only about European content.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Teun.
Yeah, my prediction for the offshore wind is actually coming 5 years. Although we are, as European companies, the leading market, but I think a lot of new innovations will come from new markets in America and Asia. They have different minds on how to build things.
Brilliant. We'll open your predictions 5 years' time and see how close we are. We're running out of time, so thank you so much for all of you being here. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you for your enthusiasm. And please join me to thank our panel for the great contribution. Thank you very much.